Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to take a closer look at heat embossing. So let's go. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Today I thought we'd take a closer look at heat embossing. So a couple of days ago I did a Craftalia craft haul, and if you haven't already seen it, please do go and have a look on my channel. And on that craft haul I picked up my Craftalia heat gun, and I've had a few comments on some of my videos where I've shown like embossing powders where people are really interested in heat embossing. They want to know how it works, some of the techniques that you can use with heat embossing, and just having a look at how easy it is to do. So I thought today we would have a look at the heat embossing. I'll show you the basics that you will definitely need to be able to achieve this, or at least the best items to be able to achieve this. Then there's some things that are kind of optional, and then I thought we'd have a look at some of the techniques and some of the effects that you can make with heat embossing. So some of the things that you're definitely going to need is embossing powder. There are lots of different ones out there on the market. This one is a Nuvo embossing powder. I've picked up quite a few of these. I picked up a haul from Tonic and I got the Nuvo ones. So there's this one. Another popular company is Wow embossing powder. So I've got a couple of these. There's Heat It Up, who also does embossing powder. Then there is Ranger. There's just so many out there, but you need the embossing powder. And essentially embossing powder is like little pieces of some sort of like plasticky type material. It's very, very fine. It is like very fine glitter. And what happens is when that is heated up, it essentially melts, and that's what gives you your heat embossing. So you need some form of embossing powder, whatever is your favorite. You can get lots of different finishes, from like this one that creates like a very smooth gold finish, to like this which has glitter in there. You can get clear ones, coloured ones, metallic ones. There is so much out there, so just have a quick look. You're going to need some form of heat tool. You need something that's going to be able to create quite a bit of heat, but not too much actual hot air that's going to blow the powder away before it has time to actually melt. So this one, as I say, is from Craftalia. I picked this one up. It does have an EU plug, and I've gone back and it was my mistake. It does say in the description an EU plug on here. So if you're going to pick the Craftalia one up, you will need to make sure that you have one of the EU to UK plug adapters so that you can use it. For best results, I find you need an embossing ink, an embossing pad. You can use some ink pads. The main problem with ink pads is they tend to dry on your paper or cardstock before you actually have time to dust the powder over, whereas the embossing ink will stay sticky and wet for longer, so you just get a chance to be able to use it. So this is probably the easiest method. As I say, you can use inks as well, especially if you're using something like a pigment ink, which will generally stay wetter a little bit longer, so that you can have even more effects with that. But we're going to use the embossing ink today for this. Ideally, you need something to hold your paper or cardstock when you're heating it up. The heat that comes from these heat tools is very, very hot, and it is, unless you're using like an A4 sheet of paper and you're using the very far corner, you do run the risk of burning yourself. So I've seen some people use pegs. I use a set of tweezers, just anything that you can hold while you're heat embossing so that you don't burn yourself. You're going to need something to stamp on. So whether that be a card blank or a piece of card, I'm going to use a scrap piece of just white cardstock for this, just to be able to show you how I do the heat embossing. Ideally, you'll also then need a separate piece of paper for you to be able to capture the loose powder when you dust off the excess. A piece of paper or cardstock will allow you to tip that back into the bottle so that you don't waste it. An anti-static pouch. I have heat embossed without one, so this is more of like an optional piece. It will make it a lot easier and cleaner if you have one of these. You rub this on the area that you're going to stamp. Then when you pop your embossing powder, in theory, this prevents the powder from sticking to the rest of the sheet of card or paper. It will only stick to your embossing ink. So this is a recommendation, but as I say, I have used it without. It just means that sometimes your embossing powder sticks on the paper and you'll need like a fine brush or a pokey tool or something just to clear up the excess embossing. And then you'll need some stamps or something that you're going to emboss. So I've picked up one of the stamps. This is the peacock stamp. I'm hoping that that detail there is perfect, has a nice amount of detail in there without it being too much. But if it is, then I'll just grab a different stamp set to show you. You can also use this on stencils. I think I have a stencil, so I can probably grab you one of those for later on as well. And of course you'll need your stamping mat, or if you're using a wooden blocked stamp, then that's absolutely fine. So we're going to get started. So I'm going to open up this pack and I'm going to grab the stamp I want to use. So I want to use this stamp here. So I'm going to start off by taking it off the stamping wrapper. This is a brand new stamp. There we go. So I'm going to move some of my bits and pieces out the way so we've got somewhere to work. I'm going to bring in my stamping mat. I've already had a play with this. I absolutely love it. Don't know what I've been messing about on. Definitely should have picked one of these up earlier. It's going to miss you yet. So, remove these bits out of the way. This is just a scrap piece of card. So I'm just going to cut off a piece. It should be big enough for my stamp. Pop that to one side for later. I want to make sure this is where you can see, so we'll pop that on there. Trying to get these magnets to come apart now. They've stuck together. There we go. So I'm going to pop that down. We're going to flick this over to pick this stamp up. Make sure that is on your plate. Turn that over. And then we're going to ink it up with, I'm using the Tim Holtz Distress embossing ink. There are a lot of different ones out there. Versafine do one, because I think I've actually got that. It's essentially just like a clear ink pad. So we're going to ink that up. Make sure that you've got absolutely everywhere. You don't want to miss any fine detail at all. I think that's done. We're going to give the piece of paper a wipe down with your anti-static, just to make sure you've captured it. I'm going to bring this over and stamp that down. And lift that up, and I'm just going to check to make sure that that has picked up all of the detail. I'm just missing slightly on that top part of the bird, so I'm just going to re-ink it slightly. Flick this back over and concentrate a lot of my pressure on that top area to make sure that that's been captured. That's better. You can see where it's gone. If I have missed anywhere, then it's absolutely fine. So I'm going to pick this piece up. I'm going to move my stamping platform out of the way. Then I'm going to pick the colour I want. I think I'm going to use a different colour. I think this colour would actually be really nice on this peacock. So I'm going to grab this one. Open up the packet. Look at that, beautiful. This is definitely going to have like a glittery colour into it. Move that out of the way a little bit. Then we're going to sprinkle the embossing powder all over the image. You want to make sure that you capture everything. And this is where that extra sheet of paper on the bottom comes in, because that will capture the excess. So you can see where it's captured some of the pieces. I think my stamp might be a bit too intricate, but we are going to keep going with that one, and I can always get a different one. So let's move this. I'm going to pop this straight in. It is a little bit like glitter. It's very, very fine. It will go everywhere in the unmelted format. So shake that in there, make sure that's all gone. Now comes for the noisy bit, but I do want you guys to be able to see this. So what we're now going to do is we're going to heat emboss this. So you're going to take your heat tool. We're going to turn it on. Make sure it gets hot. Once it feels warm, we can then start to put that heat on that image. And what you'll see is when the heat embossing gets warm enough, the colours will change slightly. And it will work like magic. Now you do need to make sure you keep it moving, because the last thing we want is to burn or set fire to your paper or cardstock. But at the same time, you need to make sure that there is heat getting to every part of this. Starting to change. You may find that your paper becomes ever so slightly warped because this is hot air heating up that paper. We're nearly there. Then once it's done, you can turn your heat gun off. Most of them, like this Craftily one, has a little stand. You just need to give your paper and the embossing a minute just to cool down, and then you have this gorgeous embossed piece. So the glitter isn't loose, the glitter is now embedded into that embossing. Just look at that shine. That is so beautiful. And you can use this with lots of different types of stamps. I think this one was just a little bit too detailed maybe. But just look at that sparkle. So you can do it with those types of stamps. Another thing that you can do as well, and let's bring this back in. And I'm going to grab another piece of my scrap cardstock, is you can use your background stamps. So if anybody's been watching my craft channel, you know that I picked up a really good haul of crafts from a hospice centre, and one of the things that I picked up was this happy birthday like background stamp on a wooden block. So you can use these. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that over, and I'm just going to pop my embossing on here. So just make sure you cover it all. It's probably easier with a larger embossing pad, but I have only got this smaller one, so I'm sure it will be fine. Just make sure it's all captured, which I think that is. Then I'm going to stamp this down onto my paper. Oh, I should have used my anti-static. See, I've got my anti-static, so let's see how good this is. So I'm just making sure that I have got that stamped really nicely. And lift this up. I'm even going to just quickly rub that over. I'm going to take that off there. And you'll see where the embossing ink is. I'm going to move that. Now, because I stamped onto here, there may be some embossing ink on that. So I'm going to flick this over. And then let's try with the gold. So, again, you're going to pick up your sheet. And we want to make sure that we get this embossing powder all over this piece of cardstock. Then you're going to tap it off. Make sure to get as much of that excess off as you can. I'll just cut that bit there with my nail. There we go. So that's how that's looking so far. Just going to pop that to one side while I pop this heat embossing powder back in. Move that paper out of the way for now. Pop my lid back on. Now again, we're going to have a bit of noise while I pop on the heat gun. Because we've already used it, it should be pretty quick to heat up this time. So then, once it starts to go now, you can just see it changing. You see that, how that's changing colour and going super sparkly. Just constantly make sure you're moving your heat gun. You don't need really big motions, but you do need to make sure you keep it moving. Because while we can cope with a bit of warping, especially if you're doing it like this on a separate piece of paper and then going to attach it to your card, what we don't want to do is burn this. So I'm just going to turn that round slightly so that we can then start working on this end. I'm just going to turn my heat gun onto speed 2 because this is quite a big piece. There we go. Perfect. So I'm going to give that a second just to cool off because it does get quite hot. And there is our second piece of cardstock. Now what you'll notice is because I didn't brush this with the anti-static, there is some little pieces of embossing powder in between there. But I think that looks absolutely beautiful. So you can use the heat embossing for those sorts of pieces. Then you can start looking into some of your techniques. So obviously you can stamp a plain image and you can heat emboss it with all the different colours of heat embossing and make an absolutely beautiful stamp. But there are other things that you can do as well. So one of the things that I used to do is you can heat emboss with a clear embossing powder. Now I haven't got a true clear, but I do have this Poly Sparkle, which I believe is clear with a bit of glitter in, which will do the same job. And then what you can do is you can go over it with your inks and then wipe away the ink from where it's been heat embossed. And what the heat embossing will do is protect the paper or cardstock underneath. So if you heat emboss on top of a white cardstock, what you'll have is you'll have your coloured inks around the outside, and then where you've heat embossed it will be white. Or if you're using another colour, let's say you're doing it on a blue piece of card or something, then you will have that blue card as well. So we're going to have a go at doing that. Let me see if I have a better stamp to hand, which I don't think I do. So give me a second while I grab a different stamp and we'll have a go at doing that one. Okay, so I've just grabbed a different stamp set. I picked up this one. I'm not sure where I got it from, to be totally honest, so I don't want to start telling lies. But I'm going to use, I think, this leaf one. I think this one will be okay to show you this technique. So we're going to grab another piece of cardstock. We're going to pop that on there, look. Pick that up. Again, I'm going in with my embossing ink. I'm going to remember to wipe this with my anti-static pouch. Come in with my stamp. I'm going to double check that I'm happy with that. And I am. I think that looks beautiful. So I'm going to take it off my stamping board. I'm going to grab my scrap piece of paper. Put this on here and I'm going to use this. I think this is clear. I must admit I've not tried this one yet, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be clear. So I'm going to dust this one over, making sure to get all of that detail. Tap it off. I think that looks beautiful. Put this back in the tub. And then again, we're going to heat emboss, so I apologise for the noise. Because this is quite a big piece, I think I should actually be able to hold this cardstock in the corners and be okay. So make sure this is nice and hot. Can you see that changing? I'm not convinced the other colours really showed it as well, but there we go. So I just want to make sure it's all melted, which it is. That looks good. So I'm going to turn the heat gun off. Hopefully you saw how that one changed. That one I could really see change very quickly. So you'll see you have this really nice glossy heat embossed area. I'm just going to make sure that that's cool. And then I'm going to grab a couple of, I'm going to use my distress inks. So we'll use this iced spruce. And we'll use this other green as well. So let me get into these, because these are new. Let me get into these and I'll be back. Right, so I've got into these. What I've also done is I've grabbed my blending tool. This is a cheap one that I picked up from Temu, but just use any blending tool that you feel comfortable doing. I've also grabbed 2 brand new sponge pads because I haven't used these distress inks yet. So I've gone for 2 colours. You can go for 1 colour, 4 colours, 5 colours, however many colours that you want and whichever colours that you want. You're going to take your blending tool and pick up some of that colour. Be as strong or as pale as you want with your colour. And you're basically going to come in and start blending that over the embossing. Not the best cardstock because it seems to just suck my ink, but hopefully you'll get the idea of it. So I've gone for like opposite corners on here, but as I say, you could really like achieve a marbly sort of look on this. I'm going to grab my second colour. So that first one was Mowed Lawn. This one is Iced Spruce. And again, it's just this cardstock. It's not the best, but it's just some cheap one that I picked up from Amazon. But it is giving the idea of the effect I'm trying to achieve right now. And so what happens is your ink can't stick to the embossing areas. So I'm just going to give that white to make sure my embossed area is clear. But now you can see how you can put in extra depth and detail. You can make these into gorgeous backgrounds. Imagine that happy birthday with some beautiful colours on that. If it was in clear, you can make gorgeous backgrounds, add different colours, make it look like a marbling effect. Definitely use better cardstock than I'm using because it always does suck this up. Like even if I'm using stamping ink, it's not my favourite. But I just absolutely love the effect that you get from this. So I hope you find this kind of useful. I've showed you a couple of effects that you can do. So you can make your backgrounds using this. You can take your actual stamped images such as this. You can use it with the clear and then ink over it to make some sort of background or even focal points. To be fair, I think that heat embossing is absolutely fantastic. I can't believe it's taken me this long to get back into it. So you'll definitely be seeing some heat embossing on some of my future cards and projects. I hope you've enjoyed this and you find it useful. If you do, please do hit that like button, and if you haven't already, please also do subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so that you know each and every time that we post a video. We try our best to post daily. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, but we do try. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much. Bye for now.